Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Top 5 most wanted men in the entire world. Why don't we talk about it?
Robert William Fisher. Robert William Fisher is a U.S. citizen who was added to the FBI's Most Wanted list on June 29, 2002, and became a fugitive after he supposedly murdered his wife, Mary, and their 2 children, Robert Jr. and Brittany. Fisher didn't stop there, however, and tried to cover his tracks by blowing up their home in Scottsdale, Arizona. It seems that his marriage was on the rocks when he went on his murder spree, and the FBI believes his motive was that his wife was talking about divorcing him.
Robert Fisher's excuse for the alleged murder of his entire family was the fact that his wife wanted a divorce. For what I'm sure are very obvious reasons, his wife wanted to separate from Robert Fisher, and instead of the normal reaction, which would be going through with the divorce, Robert Fisher thought it would be way smarter to murder his entire family and set their house on fire. I think it's fair to say Robert Fisher's judgment was a little off.
It seems that she was worried about Fisher's temper, and rightfully so. Once he had dispatched his family one by one, he rigged a natural gas line to explode, hoping to erase the evidence of his brutal crimes. His issues potentially stemmed from the fact that his parents had a messy divorce when he was only 15, leaving him broken both mentally and emotionally. Once an active member in his Baptist church, he and his wife were undergoing marriage counseling, thanks to an affair he had had with a prostitute that left him with a urinary tract infection.
Robert's temper really scared his wife. Not only that, but he was not a faithful man. Who would have thought that him having an affair would be the least of his wife's problems?
According to neighbors, the two ended up getting into a vicious and heated argument 10 hours prior to their house being decimated by an explosion. When emergency responders arrived to put out the subsequent blaze, they also found that Mary was shot in the back of the head prior to the blast, and that Fisher had slit the throats of both of his children before rigging their furnace's gas line to explode and going on the run.
If you guys have any information on any of these people, I will leave a link down below so that these absolutely disgusting human beings can be caught and brought to justice.
Alexis Flores. On June 2nd of 2007, he's currently a wanted man after he kidnapped, raped, and murdered 5-year-old Ariana de Jesus in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, back in 2002. A Honduran citizen who was homeless and living a drifting lifestyle in the U.S., Flores was deported to Honduras in 2005 due to his being charged in connection to a forgery ring in Arizona.
Okay, so this guy already has a history of pretty awful crimes. It seems like the FBI has had their eyes on him for quite a while, and it's not hard to tell why. This dude is bad news. I mean, little kids, dude, come on.
He was deported before his more troubling crimes came to light. 5 years after the event, DNA evidence effectively tied him to his crime. But at that point, he had already disappeared after going into hiding back in Honduras.
It's very common for criminals to go on the run in different countries because some countries do not have laws between one another, meaning that a lot of the times a criminal can only be convicted within the country where the crime was committed. So his plan was, all right, I'm gonna get out of here and I'll just leave my past behind me. And unfortunately, it did work for him.
It seems that Flores will remain on the FBI's most wanted list until he's finally apprehended and brought back to the U.S. to face justice. He can be easily identified thanks to a large surgical scar on his neck that Flores said he received after being injured when Hurricane Mitch hit Honduras back in 1998.
Alexis Flores has a very distinct scar. Things like scars and tattoos are amazing at helping identifying people because at a certain point, a lot of people can start to look familiar, but it's our unique features that can be dead giveaways. So if you see anyone with that type of scar in the Honduras area, keep an eye out because it might be Alexis Flores.
Jason Derek Brown. Jason Derek Brown has been on the FBI Most Wanted list since December 8th of 2007, when he became the prime suspect in a murder and robbery investigation. In November of 2004, it seems that he shot and killed an armored car guard outside of a movie theater in Phoenix, Arizona. He managed to grab $56,000 during the robbery and fled the scene with the cash stuffed in a duffel bag.
I'm noticing a lot of these crimes are happening in Arizona. I don't really know what it is about Arizona, but it seems to be getting into people's heads.
Brown used a bicycle of all things to make his escape, and it's crazy that nobody was able to stop him or track him down after the fact. He currently has a $200,000 bounty on his head.
$200,000 bounty. If you're trying to make some money, try and find this guy.
They have narrowed down the list of countries that he potentially escaped to, and are sure that he fled to either France or Thailand.
It's so sad to see a man like Jason throw away his entire life just for some quick money, but that is essentially what he did. He got hands on some money and decided to flee the country, in the process hurting people, and is now gonna have to be on the run for the rest of his life. That doesn't seem like a good life to live.
Yaser Abdel Saeed is wanted for the double murder of his daughters back in January 1st, 2008.
I believe these types of men deserve the highest, most punishable sentence they could possibly receive.
He was officially added to the FBI's most wanted list on December 4th of 2014. Saeed was supposedly very controlling of his family and was upset that his daughters weren't adhering to traditional Islamic cultural practices.
Research actually does show that controlling behavior like that is commonly found in murderers, but what truly makes a man capable of killing his daughters, we will never know. These types of monsters and the way their brains work is extremely fascinating. The things we as humans are capable of is disgusting, and this man is living proof.
He got them to join in his cab by suggesting the trio go out to dinner, but shot them when they got inside. He eluded police and is now on the run. It seems that he also physically and sexually abused both of his daughters.
I just want to say really quickly, these two girls were absolutely beautiful, and the fact that they had to go through this absolutely breaks my heart. It comes to no surprise to me that before taking their lives, he made their lives hell as well.
Some sources say that he may have fled to Egypt, but the FBI is sure that he's still driving a cab somewhere in New York City, but they haven't been able to track him down yet.
The federal government is sure that this man is still in New York City, living his life, working, making a living wage after killing his two daughters, and you're telling me they can't catch him?
Bedreshkumar Patel is wanted for stabbing and killing his wife in plain sight in a donut shop in Hanover, Maryland on April 12th, 2015. He was added to the FBI's most wanted list on April 28, 2017. He fled the scene and was last seen hopping on a shuttle headed to Pennsylvania Station in Newark, New Jersey.
This man took his wife's life on camera in plain sight at a dessert store. He was very obviously seen trying to flee, but for some reason, again, the federal government just could not get to him. Sometimes I wonder how men like this slip through the cracks. Is it just luck, or is it something that the federal government is lacking? I guess we will never know, but one thing is for sure, justice needs to be served. So let's not stop talking about these men until they're caught. I think we as a society need to be way more diligent about these types of behaviors. If you notice a common pattern with a lot of these wanted men, before they actually committed their horrible crimes, they exhibited very toxic behavior towards their partners, towards their families. There are warning signs before the actual terror takes place, and if they can be caught, they can be prevented. Something I really want to do from this point on my channel with you guys is tackle some of these more serious topics, because the reality of the situation is we do live in a world that is not so nice. It's not all unicorns and rainbows. Guys, the real monsters in today's world is not clowns. It's not Michael Myers. It's not Jason Voorhees. It's not Huggy Wuggy. It's human beings just like you and I. It's husbands and fathers and sons, and I want to talk about it. If you guys enjoy this video and want to hear more, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I love you guys so much, and I appreciate all of your support. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
I know that I'm innocent. God knows I'm innocent. Travis knows I'm innocent. I absolutely did not kill Travis Alexander. I had nothing to do with his murder. I didn't harm him in any way.
Hello guys, it's Jana, and today we'll be discussing Jodi Arias and the murder of Travis Alexander. To fully understand what led to the murder of Travis Alexander, it's important that we talk about the childhood of Jodi Ann Arias. Jodi Ann Arias was born on July 9th, 1980 in Salinas, California. She was born to her parents William and Sandra Arias. Now, to anyone who ever asked Jodi, she would have told them that she had almost an ideal childhood. According to her, it was all sunshine and rainbows. She later tried to turn this story around in court in an attempt to gain sympathy. But before shit really hit the fan for Jodi, she claimed to have an ideal childhood. Despite Jodi's quote-unquote perfect and ideal childhood, there was an incident in middle school where her parents actually went through her stuff and found that she was growing illegal substances. She was just a kid and she was already getting involved in some very serious stuff. Jodi had felt that by doing this, her parents violated her privacy. This broke her trust for them forever. To be fair though, you're a middle schooler getting involved in some pretty sketchy stuff. To me, it does seem that her parents tried their very best to raise her well, but somewhere along the lines, things did go wrong. Jodi was described by her parents as very, very intelligent, but very strange. Now, Jodi's father did believe that she could have possibly had bipolar disorder because she would have these violent outbursts that were mainly directed towards her mother. I do highly doubt that they thought it was a point of concern at such a young age. She was sassy and she had behavioral issues, but she was also a young girl. A close high school friend of Jodi's named Tina Ross said that Jodi was a quote-unquote good girl. However, Jodi did decide to drop out of high school in her junior year, and not only that, but she moved out of her parents' house and moved in with a new boyfriend. Now, from this point on, all the way through her early 20s, she focused on photography, loved taking photos, and she also did a lot of waitressing jobs along the West Coast until she met a man named Travis Alexander. Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander met in Las Vegas in 2006, while Travis Alexander was living in Mesa, Arizona, and she was living in Palm Desert. Despite of the fact that they had met so quickly and lived such a far distance from one another, Jodi and Travis really bonded at this business convention. They chatted for a while, and Travis even went on to tell his friends that he felt a real connection to Jodi. She knew how to pull Travis in, she captivated him, she was beautiful. She really did seem like the perfect girl for Travis. Unfortunately, after this business convention, they did have to go back to their own lives. Travis went back to Mesa, Jodi went back to Palm Desert, but this did not stop their connection from developing. Guys, Jodi and Travis entered very quickly in a long-distance relationship. They were very captivated by one another. They were also very in love, but there was one issue. Travis Alexander was a devoted Mormon, and Jodi Arias was not. Now, remember how I told you that Jodi had a boyfriend? Turns out Jodi kept this boyfriend around. Jodi really wanted to have a family. She wanted to have kids and a marriage, and the man she was with at the time had made it very clear to her that he was not interested in marriage due to a divorce that he had previously went through. Now, in Jodi's head, she's thinking, I have this boyfriend who doesn't want a marriage, and then I have this Travis Alexander guy who is a devoted Mormon, who is a successful businessman, who actually wants children and wants a family. So Jodi quickly decides she's gonna dump her current boyfriend and really start to pursue this thing with Travis. Now, in order for Jodi to actually be with Travis Alexander, she had to fully convert to Mormonism. Travis gifted Jodi the Book of Mormon and encouraged her to educate herself and told her that he would love for her to convert. Thus, on November 26th, Travis baptized Jodi and she became a Mormon. Now, around the time that Jodi left her home, her parents also noticed that she had progressively become mentally unstable. There were actually a few incidences where Jodi's friends would call her mom and tell her that she needed to help Jodi. Now, her friends never got into detail, but they did tell her mother that she would freak out all the time. They didn't really understand what was going on, but Jodi was losing it. Obviously, as their long-distance relationship progressed, Jodi would make her way to Arizona quite often to spend time with Travis, which in turn also meant that she would spend time with his friends, who very quickly realized that something was off about her. Eventually, Travis's friends had to sit him down and tell him that they did not like Jodi's behavior. Over the course of their relationship, Jodi had become progressively more and more controlling towards Travis. She always insisted that Travis tell her exactly where he is, who he is with. She very rarely allowed Travis to do things on his own without her. She would go through Travis's messages, and she even hacked his MySpace account. So this girl was absolutely crazy. This toxic and controlling behavior really stood out to Travis's friends, and they had to tell him. They were like, listen man, this girl is not good for you. She's very controlling, she is very toxic, and you need to get her the hell out of your life. Travis's friend Hughes said that he started seeing things that were extremely disturbing about Jodi, and he was worried that he was gonna find Travis one day chopped up in his freezer. So as you can tell, this isn't some small concern. His friends are really worried for him. By the time that Travis's friends told him this, he actually started to notice this behavior himself. It had gotten to the point where he was no longer able to go to the bathroom by himself because Jodi would stand outside of the bathroom listening in. Is this girl not an absolute lunatic or what? Now, because obviously he was aware that this was not right, he thought about it and he thought it would be best if he broke up with Jodi. But because of Jodi's very toxic, scary behavior, he thought it would be best to wait for Jodi to go back home to Palm Desert so that she would be very far away from him when he actually broke up with her. This guy was genuinely concerned at this point and he just wanted this girl out of his life. So because of all this, in the summer of 2007, Jodi and Travis did end up breaking up. Travis very quickly moved on and started mingling with other women, which Jodi very quickly got word of and did not like. Now, when Jodi noticed that Travis was talking to all these girls, she was upset. She was upset that she wasn't getting Travis's attention anymore, so she quickly needed to think of a plan to get his attention. In order to get Travis's attention, Jodi told Travis that she was being stalked by a man. Now, this man was supposedly a secret admirer of Jodi's, and he was begging her to be with him. Now, Jodi thought that this was the perfect story to tell Travis because she thought Travis would get very jealous that someone else is trying to take Jodi. Although a part of Travis did feel like she was doing this for attention, he was still quite concerned for her because she was saying that a man was stalking her. So one day when Travis was hanging out with his friends, he decided to let them know that she was being stalked. He told them that he was genuinely concerned for her, and his friends immediately told him hell to the no. They told Travis not to fall for Jodi's trap and that she was just trying to get his attention. These occurrences would happen so often to the point where Travis could not do anything without Jodi getting involved in his life. Any girl he would speak to, she would try to ruin the relationship. She would even break into Travis's house to watch him with other girls. Now, after a while of this happening, somehow they got into a very big fight over email. A lot of the contents in these emails are unknown, but what I was able to find is that Travis was very mad at Jodi. Apparently, Jodi had lied to something about Travis and it was his last straw. This time, Travis was 100% done with Jodi. So Travis moves on with his life and he actually plans to go on a business trip to Cancun with his company on July 10th. Travis's company actually allowed him to bring a +1 to this trip, and Jodi was convinced that she was gonna be the girl that he was gonna invite. I don't know why she thought this because he was 100% done with her and pretty much really did not want anything to do with her at this point, but somehow Jodi found out that she wasn't invited and that some other girl was invited instead of her. Travis had actually invited another woman by the name of Mimi Hall to accompany him on this trip. Now, Mimi Hall was a good Mormon girl that Travis actually had romantic feelings for in the past, and now that he was single, he wanted to pursue her. But when Jodi found out, she was furious. On June 4th, 2008, 6 days before he was set to leave to Cancun, Jodi ended up showing unannounced to his house. Jodi and Travis ended up hooking up that night and even taking a couple of explicit photos on Travis's camera. Now, around 5 a.m. after their night of fun, Travis wanted to get into the shower. As Travis stood in the shower, Jodi proceeded to take multiple photos of Travis. Then, very suddenly, Jodi stabbed Travis 27 times. After she had stabbed him, Jodi decided that it was not enough. She still had more rage and anger to get out, and she decided to slit Travis's throat. What makes this woman an absolute monster is that even this was not enough for her. So she picked up a gun and shot Travis in the face. It's very obvious that Jodi was really making sure Travis did not make it out of this alive. While Jodi was rushing, trying to clean up this crime scene, she accidentally took 2 photos that were later used against her in court. After this, Jodi left his body in the apartment and left. In order to create somewhat of an alibi for herself, she called Travis after the murder took place and left a voicemail for him. I guess she did this to make it seem like, oh, she couldn't have done it because she thought he was alive. Now, Jodi was very quickly apprehended and initially denied having anything to do with the crime. She flat out said she had nothing to do with it. After hours of very long interrogation, she did admit to murdering Travis, but she said that it was self-defense. She claimed that Travis had attacked her, which was completely inconsistent with the crime scene. There was absolutely no evidence that Travis attacked her. Jodi caught this man off guard and took his life mercilessly. Prosecutors said that this was very clearly premeditated murder. Jodi entered into a jealous rage and she took it out on Travis. Jodi's murder trial began in January of 2013. It lasted for 5 months, and for 18 days out of those 5 months, Jodi attempted to convince the jurors that she came from an extremely abusive childhood. She argued that she had a history of cheating boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and even a twisted sexual relationship with Travis Alexander. Jodi even tried to argue that Travis was physically abusive towards her. Jodi basically tried to play every single possible card to get out of this crime. At the end of the deliberation, the jury found Jodi Arias guilty of first-degree murder of Travis Alexander and sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She is now doing her time in Perryville Prison, Arizona, where she will spend the rest of her life. After being given her sentence, when asked if she would have preferred the death penalty, Jodi said that she believed death was freedom. And honestly, I think the death sentence would be too kind for Jodi Arias. She deserves to rot in prison for the rest of her life for what she did and for the way that she tried to manipulate everyone out of believing that she did it. Jodi Arias was a monster who took the life of an innocent man out of jealousy and anger. I love you guys so much. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next video when we discuss the next monster. I love you. Bye.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Today we're going to be talking about the murder of Kaylee Marie Anthony and the most hated woman in America, her mother, Casey Anthony. Honestly, I don't even know where to start with Casey Anthony because this girl is an absolute lunatic. Casey Anthony was born on March 19th, 1986 in Warren, Ohio. She was born to her parents, Cindy and George Anthony. Something very interesting about her father that is going to come into play later is that he was actually a member of the law enforcement. Her dad was a literal police officer. You would have thought that she would have learned a thing or two about lying to police by having a police officer father, but this story proves that she clearly did not. So anyways, Casey's born. She's one of two children. She has an older brother. Quite honestly, growing up, it seems that everyone believed they were just a regular, normal family. And honestly, up until Casey came along, they probably were, but things started to take a turn. The reason being is Casey Anthony had a very interesting pattern of lying. This girl lied a lot. She lied about anything she could think to lie about. Anyway, Casey's in high school now, and according to a lot of her friends, she's a little bit of a liar. But either way, eventually it comes time for Casey to graduate from high school and move on with her life. As Casey Anthony's graduation was approaching, her parents were starting to ask very normal questions. They wanted to know where the graduation was, when they could attend, what to bring. They were even planning to surprise her with a party. But for some reason, Casey never gave them a straight up answer. Like anytime they would talk about attending or celebrating her graduation, Casey would just kind of dodge all of their questions. So her parents have questions, Casey's not answering them, so they decide to call up her high school and ask them for all the information. They said, listen, hey, we're Casey Anthony's parents. We just want to know when is the graduation, when can we attend? But they tell Casey Anthony's parents that Casey Anthony was actually going to be unable to graduate that year because she had not been attending her classes. Casey Anthony had been lying to her parents about attending high school for the longest time, making them think that she's gonna graduate, only for them to find out that she's not even gonna be able to graduate. Casey's parents were at an absolute shock that their daughter has been lying to them like that. It's a pretty big lie, and her parents were very upset. So soon after this incident, life just went on for the Anthony household. Casey lived with her parents. Everything was fine and dandy. Soon after the incident, Casey decided that she never wanted to go back to school and she just wanted to get a job. So she did. She got a job at Universal Studios working at Hard Rock Cafe. She was finally getting the hang of things. She had a consistent job. She was doing good. Then in January of 2005, Casey Anthony met Jesse Grunt, and the two really hit it off. They really fell in love. He was in love with her. She was in love with him, and it was really going good for them. However, literally by the end of that same year that they met and fell in love, Casey got pregnant. Casey absolutely insisted that the father of the baby was the man that she was currently with, Jesse Grunt, but supposedly there were a lot of other men that could have been the father, including a recent ex of hers that had died in a car accident. I know it's like weirdly specific, but he died in a car accident. He could have been the father maybe. No one really knew at the time who the father was. So now Casey's young and pregnant, and she does not want to be pregnant. She wants to go out and party and enjoy herself, and a kid is just not gonna fit into the picture. So Casey goes up to one of her friends and starts talking about potentially giving the baby up for adoption. And then somehow from that point on, for the next 7 months of her pregnancy, Casey managed to hide it from her parents that she lived with. A lot of sources say that Casey is a very small, petite girl, and it would be very hard to tell if she was pregnant, but Casey did say that she went out of her way to hide the pregnancy. Like, she would wear huge hoodies and baggy clothes, so she was deliberately hiding the pregnancy. However, it was inevitable that her parents were gonna find out anyway, and they did. 7 months into her pregnancy, Casey Anthony's parents found out that she was pregnant, and Casey told them that she had considered having the baby but just giving it up for adoption. However, Casey's parents were not happy with that idea. Casey said that they absolutely forbade her from giving the baby up for adoption. Casey was gonna have this baby whether she liked it or not. And so on August 9th, 2005, Casey Anthony gave birth to Kaylee Marie Anthony. And this is unfortunately where the story gets very, very sad. So soon after Casey had Kaylee, her boyfriend proposed to her. He said, listen, you have a baby now. I want to be this baby's father. I want to have a family. And he proposes to her. Casey is so excited. She wants to get married. She loves this guy, and she says yes. A little after the couple's engagement, Casey Anthony supposedly hired a nanny by the name of Zanny. Her actual name was supposedly Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, but Casey always referred to her as Zanny. So Casey hires this nanny for Kaylee, and Casey's parents are a little curious. They're like, is this nanny reputable? Do you know if she's a good nanny? Does she have experience with kids? I mean, is this like the best decision? And Casey insists that Zanny was a reputable nanny who was actually recommended to her by a coworker from Universal Studios. So Casey's parents are like, okay, cool, you have a nanny, whatever. Okay, so we have Casey Anthony with this Zanny nanny that's taking care of her daughter, Kaylee. Now, for some reason, and I don't really know what reason, it was also around this time that Casey's fiance started getting suspicious. He started wondering if he actually is Kaylee's father, because rumors were swirling around and he was curious. He decided he wanted to do a DNA test, and it revealed that Kaylee was not his daughter. He was absolutely devastated because he had been involved in so much of her life, and he had obviously been lied to by the woman that he was planning to marry. For some reason, despite all of this, he wanted to work things out with Casey, and I really don't understand why, because this girl is very clearly a pathological liar. She just lies about everything. It's crazy. Even though he wasn't Kaylee's father and that was upsetting to him, that wasn't the only reason he wanted to break off the engagement. Jesse said that Casey Anthony's behavior was becoming very erratic and she was becoming a different person. This girl was getting scarier by the minute. Now, after the separation, Casey and Kaylee went back to live with the grandparents, and for a few years, supposedly, it went very well. But on June 15th, 2008, a heated argument took place in the household. No one really knows what the argument was about. It doesn't really matter what it was about, but what matters is that Casey wanted to get the hell out of there. So the next day, on June 16th, Casey Anthony takes her parents' car, packs her stuff, and takes her daughter and leaves. Now, supposedly, she was leaving to a work trip in Tampa, Florida, but because of the fight that she had gotten into with her parents, she didn't want to come back right away. So supposedly that's why she packed a bunch of stuff and just left. Unfortunately, this was also the day that Kaylee Anthony was last seen alive. Now, the day after this, Casey Anthony went to her boyfriend's house at the time. His name was Tony Lazaro, and when he saw that Casey came to his house without Kaylee, he was wondering where her daughter was, but she just kept giving him a bunch of excuses. After this, over the next few weeks, her parents tried to reach out to Casey and talk to their granddaughter. They would ask, hey, can we just talk to her? Can we hear her voice? How is she doing? But Casey kept saying that she was with this Zanny nanny and saying that she wasn't with Kaylee, or Kaylee was fine, or just any excuse she could think of. And then on July 13th, 2008, Casey's parents get a very interesting letter in the mail. It's from a tow yard, and if you remember, Casey Anthony took her parents' car to go travel with. And now they're being told this car was towed and put in a tow yard. Now, Casey's dad is furious because this girl just abandoned his car in the middle of nowhere. Her father goes to pick up the car, and when he gets there and he opens the door, he sees that his daughter's purse is still in the car. Not only that, but a lot of Kaylee's toys were in the car. And get this is literally the most disturbing part of the story. He said that when he opened the trunk of the car, he smelled something that was unmistakably the scent of human decomposition. Now, remember how in the beginning of the story I told you that Casey Casey's dad was a police officer. So when he opens that trunk, he knows definitely that there was a dead body in that trunk. He goes and tells his wife, obviously, and Casey's mom loses her mind. She is very, very concerned for her granddaughter and she needs to see her immediately. So somehow she finds Casey Anthony at her boyfriend Tony's house, gets her to come back home to her parents' house, sits her down and says, okay, we need to talk. Where the hell is Kaylee? What happened to Kaylee? We haven't seen our granddaughter in so long.
There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the car.
And do you know what Casey Anthony tells them? She tells them that she had left Kaylee on June 16th with Zanny the nanny and hasn't seen her since. She tells her parents that her daughter has been kidnapped by her nanny. This is unbelievable, but on July 15th, 31 days after Kaylee had disappeared, Casey decided to report her missing.
Why are you calling now? Why didn't you call 31 days ago? I've been looking for her and have gone through other resources to try to find her, which was stupid.
So obviously the police need to interview the mother of the missing child in order to understand what's happening. And the more they start talking to Casey, the more they realize that this girl makes absolutely zero sense. Her story's not adding up. She keeps talking about this Zanny nanny that they've never heard of before. Police caught Casey Anthony in so many lies that it's genuinely insane. So because Casey had told police that she found out about Zanny through a coworker at Universal, the police wanted to go to Universal and just, meet the coworker and talk to the coworker and see what's up. So Casey takes police officers straight into Universal, through the front doors, into the back offices, only to tell them she doesn't even have a job at Universal. I kid you not, she literally turned around to them in the middle of the hallway as she was walking and just said, I don't work here. I really do not work here. I just lied to you. Like, is this girl not an absolute lunatic? It's beyond me. Eventually, Casey had admitted to lying about the whole Universal thing and whatever. Casey had been caught in so many lies by now that she just couldn't even deny it anymore. Eventually, Casey admitted to lying about the whole job thing, so they did arrest her. And then they came to find out that after her daughter had gone missing, she got a tattoo that said, beautiful life in Italian. Your daughter goes missing and you tattoo beautiful life on yourself? There's something sketchy about that. Now, because a lot of the arguments in court against Casey Anthony were against her character and her morals, and because of the absolutely insane media attention that this case got, and honestly because of probably a million different things, it's gonna shock you when I tell you that Casey Anthony was not found guilty of murdering her daughter. She did get a few charges about lying to the police, but that's basically it. She was found not guilty of murdering her daughter. Even though her car smelled like decomposition, even though she literally made it clear she never wanted to have this baby, even though she was very obviously a pathological liar. I mean, it's just crazy to me because this girl is so obviously guilty. There's so many details to this story. I feel like I could talk in this video forever, you guys. I really encourage you to do your own research on this case because it really goes a lot deeper than I went into in this video. It's just so much information. But that was the story of Casey Anthony and the murder of her daughter, Kaylee Anthony. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. I love you guys so much and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Today we're going to be talking about family annihilator Chris Watts and the events that led up to him taking the lives of his entire family. His wife and daughters, Shannon, Bella, and Cece. Shannon and Chris Watts actually met on Facebook in 2010 while Shannon was still living in North Carolina. Shannon was actually just recently divorced from her first marriage and not too many sources go into exactly what happened. All we really know about that marriage is that it didn't really last that long. 2 years after meeting on Facebook, Chris and Shannon Watts decide to get married. The pair got married on November 3rd, 2012 in Charlotte, North Carolina. After getting married, Chris Watts got a really good job opportunity up in Colorado, so the pair decided to move out there. And as the pair started their life together, it was seen all over Shannon's social media.
So we just shared our Thrive Bites. I made some of them a lot bigger than, bigger than I normally would. But, hey Michelle, but there you go.
She would post little vlogs and pictures and updates, and from looking at her social media, they seemed like a really happy couple. These videos are all even more chilling to watch when you know how this story ends. 1 year after the couple's marriage and move to Colorado, Shannon Watts gives birth to their first daughter. Bella Marie Watts was born on December 17th, 2013, and Shannon Watts was in love with her. Her obituary actually states that Shannon spent every moment thanking God for blessing her with such a gift. The two were very excited for this baby. I mean, they were starting a freaking family. And just 2 years after Bella was born, Shannon gave birth to Celeste, their second daughter. Celeste Catherine Watts was born on July 17th, 2015. Shannon unfortunately had the autoimmune disease lupus, and as she struggled with her health, she always said her biggest motivation were her 2 daughters. She wanted to stay healthy for Celeste and Bella. The same year that Celeste was born, the couple started to face some really intense financial troubles. They were struggling to make car and mortgage payments, and they were in really deep credit card debt, like the type of credit card debt that they could not get out of. They were starting to get overwhelmed because the 2 of them together weren't making enough money to make ends meet. And with 2 daughters to take care of, they had no choice but to file for bankruptcy. It seems that after filing for bankruptcy, everything kind of went south for the family. Financial troubles were kind of the catapult for all the other problems that arose later in their relationship. Now, in the absolute midst of these terrible financial troubles and bankruptcy that they're in, Shannon gets pregnant with her 3rd baby. And despite all of their current struggles, Shannon felt really blessed by this baby. So on June 11th, 2018, Shannon surprised Chris Watts with a pregnancy video. In the video, she wore a shirt that said, "Oops, we did it again," and tells Chris Watts, her husband, that she is expecting their 3rd baby.
So pink means...
That's just the test.
I know. It just says the pink is gonna be girls.
I don't know. Just the test.
That's awesome.
But what Shannon didn't know was that it was around the same time that Chris Watts met and began communicating with a coworker by the name of Nicole Kessinger. Sources say that the 2 would often see each other at work. They would just kind of run into each other, and eventually, despite the fact that he was married with children, he felt the need to strike up a conversation with this woman. Supposedly, Chris went up to Nicole Kessinger in front of her office and struck up a conversation. This conversation led to their relationship evolving over time, and just within 2 months, the 2 started having an affair. Chris was supposedly going to see Nicole 4 to 5 times a week, all while Shannon is carrying his freaking baby. What an asshole. Now, if you're wondering how things look like from Nicole Kessinger's perspective, I'll tell you. Supposedly, Chris Watts was telling Nicole Kessinger that he was in the midst of a divorce. Newsflash, he was not in the midst of a divorce. He was in the midst of having another child, not a freaking divorce. Anyway, so he tells his mistress that he is working on divorcing his wife Shannon, and when Shannon and the girls take a trip to North Carolina to visit Shannon's family, Chris Watts takes the opportunity to tell his mistress that his divorce with Shannon was finalized. The divorce was not finalized because there was no divorce to begin with. This guy was blatantly lying to his mistress. Now eventually Shannon comes back from this trip with her kids and they're back to being a family. Shannon's pregnant, Chris is having this affair, Shannon has no idea that he's having an affair, and Chris decides, you know what, I'm gonna go fly and visit my family. But before he leaves, he writes Nicole, his mistress, a love note. So Chris Watts was romantic enough to leave his mistress a love letter, but not romantic enough to maintain the relationship with his wife, because it was on this trip to visit his family that problems between Shannon and Chris Watts really started. Shannon was starting to get upset by Chris's behavior because he was growing distant. He wasn't as involved with the kids and with her pregnancy as much as she hoped he would be. So while he's on this trip, text messages revealed that the 2 were arguing a lot. She was complaining to him about everything that was bothering her, and she even questioned his loyalty. Now supposedly Shannon had brought this up before because she was suspicious of him cheating before, but anytime Shannon brought this up to Chris, he would always fully deny ever cheating on her. Despite all of this arguing between the couple, on August 9th, 2018, right before Shannon was meant to leave on a work trip to Arizona, she tells a really close friend that her and Chris had talked about their issues and supposedly had a really good conversation. It seemed like the 2 really worked things out. So much so that before Shannon left for this work trip, she wrote Chris a handwritten letter. So things were really starting to look up for the couple. But while Shannon is on this work trip, Chris has other plans. He hires a babysitter and tells Shannon that he's going to a baseball game with his friends. You guessed it, this man went to a bar with Nicole. Around 2 a.m. on August 13th is when Shannon lands back and is picked up by a friend named Nicole Atkinson from the airport. Nicole Atkinson drops Shannon off at her family home, and that was the last moment that Shannon Watts was seen alive. Now from this point on, I'm gonna start to tell the story based on what actually happened, not based on the lies that Chris tried to feed the law enforcement and the family of the victim, because this guy tried to pull every excuse in the book. I'll touch on that later, but let's talk about what Chris did and what really went down in this household, because it's freaking disgusting and he is a monster. That same morning that Shannon returned from her work trip, Chris wakes up and gets ready for work. Before Chris leaves to work, he decides that he wants to wake Shannon up and have a talk. So he wakes her up and he tells her, despite her pregnancy and despite everything, he has been having an affair and he wants this marriage to end. Now you have to really imagine hearing this from Shannon's point of view. She was probably completely blindsided by this because she had no freaking idea. Yeah, she had some doubts and fears, but in her head, her marriage was going, pretty well. So when Shannon hears this, she looks Chris straight in the eye and says, "You are never gonna see your children ever again." And it was in that moment that Chris Watts decided to take Shannon Watts' life by strangulation. At this moment, their oldest daughter, Bella, who was 4 at the time, runs into the room and says, "Is mommy okay? What's wrong with mommy?" But Chris doesn't say anything. He grabs Bella, he goes, gets Cece, and puts them in the back of his car. He takes Shannon's body, throws it in the trunk, and drives away to a work site. Chris believed that his work site would be a perfect place for a dumping spot because it was basically just 2 oil tanks in the middle of nowhere. Once Chris Watts gets to the oil tanks is when he decides to take the lives of his 2 daughters, Bella and Cece. He then shoves the both of them in the oil tanks separately and buries Shannon in a shallow grave close to the oil tanks. Chris Watts wouldn't even allow his family to rest peacefully together. He had to separate their bodies. Now that is the truth, and that is what Chris Watts did. But before we found out all of this, Chris tried to play the widower card really well. Shannon's friend Nicole Atkinson, the one that dropped her from the airport to her house, hadn't heard from Shannon in a while, and she was worried if something had happened to her, so she went over to Shannon's house. Shannon wasn't home, she wasn't opening the door, Chris wasn't home. Now Nicole Atkinson is one badass, let me tell you. She is the type of friend that you want because she was fighting for Shannon when no one else was. She called police before Chris Watts ever did and reported Shannon missing. Police rushed to the house where Chris met up with them. They walked through the entire house, they talked to Chris, and right off the bat, nothing was adding up to anyone. Chris looked suspicious to Nicole Atkinson, to all the police officers, basically to anyone who spoke to him. After Shannon and the girls were reported missing, Chris actually went on national television begging for their safe return.
I just want them back. I just want them to come back. And if they're not safe right now, that's what's tearing me apart. Because if they are safe, they're coming back. But if they're not, this has got to stop. Like, somebody has to come forward.
People noticed very quickly that this guy is a total weirdo. You would imagine a man in this situation would be in absolute distress, but Chris seemed a little too calm. When Chris was initially arrested, he denied being involved in anything. He had a theory that Shannon picked the girls up and ran away, but as police kept pushing for answers, he was kind of running out of excuses. You guys, police interviewed Chris Watts for hours because they really had to find a way to get him to confess to these murders. After his theory of Shannon running away didn't make sense to the police, he thought of another excuse. He tried to tell police, "You know what? I did take my wife's life, but that's only because she attacked my kids." Now, police weren't really happy with this confession either because it just simply made no sense to them. So they keep pushing Chris, hoping for a confession, and Chris says, "You know what? If I'm gonna say what happened, I want to talk to my father." So the detectives get Chris Watts' father to sit in the interrogation room with him, one one-on-one so that Chris can tell him exactly what happened. And when the two sit down to talk, Chris tells his father the full truth of what he actually did to the girls, which is exactly what I told you a few minutes ago. Chris fully admitted to taking the lives of his entire family. He has in very great detail described everything that has happened in the crime and fully admits that he did it. I'm sure you can imagine his father was in absolute shock. I mean, you can go see the video. It was really devastating for his father to hear that. However, the detectives had exactly what they need to prosecute him. Chris was found guilty and charged of 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy, because unfortunately at the time that this took place, Shannon was pregnant with their 3rd baby. I mean, this guy is an absolute freaking monster. Chris Watts is the perfect example of a family annihilator. He was a man in his 30s with marriage and financial issues. He was having this secret affair the entire time. He was unhappy with his life, and instead of choosing to simply walk away from the life that he was unhappy with, he decided that he had to take the lives of his entire family with him. Absolutely screw this guy, okay? I freaking hate him. I've heard this case so many times. I freaking get so pissed every time I talk about it, because it's like, why do men think they can just do these things? Chris Watts is now rotting in jail, which is exactly what he freaking deserves. I pray to God that he has the most horrible, traumatizing time in prison ever. Alright, you guys, that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you next time when we talk about yet another monster. Bye.